She told me I wasn't going anywhere in life, so I built one she couldn't enter and walked in with her boyfriend's boss on my arm. When she said the words, I didn't even flinch. "It's over," she told me, her voice carrying that sharp tone people use when they've already rehearsed the speech in their head. I've met someone who's actually going somewhere in life. I remember how the light from the kitchen window fell across her face. Calm, confident, almost pitying. I stood there, leaning against the counter, my hands in my pockets, trying to decide if I felt more sad or relieved. She kept going, filling the silence like she was afraid of what might happen if she stopped talking. "You're comfortable," she said, choosing her words carefully. "You've got potential, but you don't push yourself. He's ambitious. He's got drive. He's already in management." I nodded once. "Good for him." She blinked, like she wasn't expecting that. "That's all you're going to say? What else is there?" I said quietly, "If you've already made your choice, I'm not going to fight for a spot you've given away." For a second, I saw something flicker in her expression, confusion, maybe even guilt. But she quickly masked it with that smug smile I'd grown used to over the last few months. "I knew you'd take it like this," she said, crossing her arms. "You never care enough to fight for me." I wanted to laugh at that, but I didn't. "Instead," I said, "I care enough not to beg someone to stay when they don't want to." She rolled her eyes and grabbed her purse. "You'll regret this someday." "I doubt it," I replied. She left without another word. The door closed behind her, leaving the apartment so quiet that even the hum of the refrigerator sounded loud. For the first time in months, I didn't feel anxious. I didn't feel small. I just breathed. I walked over to the table and sat down, staring at my coffee, now cold. I thought about all the little ways she had chipped at me, the passive-aggressive comments about my job, the constant comparisons to her coworkers' boyfriends, the way she'd roll her eyes when I'd talk about my goals like they were childish dreams. Maybe she was right. Maybe I wasn't going anywhere in life, at least not in the direction she wanted. But I was done living by someone else's definition of progress. That night, I packed up everything that reminded me of her: photos, gifts, that stupid couple's vision board we made one weekend when she decided we needed to manifest success. I put it all in a box, sealed it, and left it by the door. The next morning, I went for a run, something I hadn't done in years. The cold air burned my lungs, but it felt real, grounding. I wasn't running away from her. I was running towards something, though I didn't know what yet. A week later, I heard through mutual friends that she'd officially started dating him, the guy from her office. The one she'd assured me was just a mentor. Apparently, he was older, successful, the kind of guy who always wore tailored suits and gave motivational speeches about hustle culture. I couldn't even be mad. She'd traded comfort for a trophy, or maybe she thought she was the trophy. It didn't matter. I stopped checking her socials. I stopped wondering how she was doing. I just worked. I took extra hours at my job, started saving seriously, and met people who actually believed in what I was building. There were long nights, self-doubt, and moments where I missed the familiarity of her voice. But then I'd remember that same voice calling me, a man without ambition. Months passed. Seasons changed. I changed. And then, life threw me something I wasn't expecting, someone who looked at me not for what I could become, but for who I already was. But that's a story for the next part. The thing about being underestimated is that it's oddly liberating. No one expects anything from you, so you can move in silence, build, learn, and grow without the weight of someone's constant criticism pressing against your chest. It started small. I didn't suddenly wake up one morning as a new man. I was still the same guy who liked slow mornings and black coffee. But I stopped apologizing for being that guy. Work was where things really began to shift. I was a systems analyst for a mid-sized tech company. Not glamorous, not flashy, but steady. After she left, I started volunteering for side projects, the kind most people avoided because they didn't pay extra. I didn't care. I just wanted to get good. One of those projects got noticed, a client integration fix that saved the company a six-figure loss. I wasn't looking for praise, but when the CEO himself walked over to my desk and said, "Good work, Alex," something clicked. From there, things snowballed. By summer, I was leading a small team. I started networking again, the kind of networking that wasn't just business cards and fake smiles, but genuine curiosity about how things worked. A mentor of mine helped me get a seat in an emerging tech accelerator. That's where I met her. Elena. She wasn't loud or flashy. She didn't walk into a room and demand attention, but she didn't need to. She had that quiet kind of confidence that came from actually doing the work. She ran a small startup focused on sustainable data storage, the kind of field that half the industry ignored until it suddenly became essential. We started talking after a late-night brainstorming session. She asked what got me into tech, and I told her, honestly, that it began as a way to fix broken things. Like computers? She asked. Like people? I said before I could stop myself. She laughed, not mockingly, but with genuine warmth. You sound like someone who's been through something. Don't we all? I replied. That was the start of something real. We didn't rush. There were no dramatic declarations or define the relationship arguments. We just clicked, two people quietly rebuilding themselves. By fall, we were officially dating. The difference between her and my ex was night and day. Elena didn't make me feel like I was auditioning for the role of boyfriend. She didn't keep a mental scoreboard of who did more, who gave more. She just was. We supported each other. She'd help me refine a proposal. I'd cook us dinner while she pulled a late-night debugging session. We celebrated small wins and laughed off the bad days. When my promotion came through, senior systems engineer, with a significant pay raise, she was more excited than I was. She threw me a tiny celebration at her apartment, complete with cheap champagne and a handmade card that said, "Told you so." That was the night I realized I was in love with her. About 6 months after my ex had left me, an invitation arrived, Ethan and Rachel's wedding. Ethan, my best friend since college. The guy who knew every stupid thing I'd done and still had my back. He was finally marrying his longtime girlfriend, and I wouldn't have missed it for the world. The irony? My ex was on the guest list too. She and Ethan's fiancée had gone to university together. When I showed Elena the invite, she raised an eyebrow. So she'll be there? Yeah, I said, not really sure how I felt about that. Elena smiled, slow and mischievous. Then I should probably find something elegant to wear. I laughed, half nervous. You planning to outshine the bride? She shrugged. Just your past. The wedding was held at a vineyard outside the city, the kind of place with perfect lighting and too many wine options. I wore a dark suit, simple but sharp. Elena wore a navy dress that somehow made the whole room look dull by comparison. We arrived, and I was instantly reminded of how small social circles can be. My ex was there. Rachel had seated her near the bar, next to a group of mutual acquaintances. She looked exactly the same, perfectly curated, carefully made up, smiling just a bit too wide. But there was something different in her eyes. Tired, maybe, or disappointed. And then I saw him. The new boyfriend. The one she left me for. Slick hair, expensive watch, that smarmy grin of someone who believed charm was a currency. He was talking loudly, laughing too much, like he needed everyone to know he belonged there. I didn't approach them. I had no reason to. Elena and I took our seats, greeted old friends, and enjoyed ourselves. It wasn't until the reception dinner that the universe decided to make things interesting. During the toasts, one of Ethan's co-workers started chatting with Elena. Turns out, they both worked with the same consulting firm, the one that had just taken on a new client. That client, the company where he worked. And, as luck would have it, his boss, the regional director, was none other than Elena's uncle. When I heard that, I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from laughing. Wait, I whispered to her later as we danced. You're telling me your uncle is his boss? She nodded, amused. Yeah, small world, huh? I smiled. Smaller than they think. 2 weeks later, Ethan's wedding photos went up on social media. There was one of me and Elena. She was laughing, her hand on my chest, the vineyard glowing behind us. And in the background, blurry but recognizable, stood my ex, staring right at us. I didn't tag her. I didn't post anything directed at her. But somehow I knew she saw it. And she would see much more soon, because the next chapter of her story, and mine, were about to collide again in ways neither of us could have predicted. Update 1. If you've ever watched a slow-motion train wreck, you know that feeling. That split second when you realize what's about to happen, and there's no stopping it. That's exactly what this part of my life felt like. 2 weeks after the wedding, things were quiet. Work was steady, Elena and I were planning a trip to Italy, and life was finally peaceful. I'd almost forgotten about my ex entirely, until the universe decided it was time for another plot twist. It started with a phone call. I was at work when my phone buzzed. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but the company name did. The firm my ex's new boyfriend worked for. Hello, this is Alex. Hi, this is Melissa from corporate HR. We're reaching out for a reference verification regarding your prior collaboration with Mr. Carter. I blinked. Collaboration? Yes, she said. Apparently, he mentioned you as someone who could vouch for his leadership and project management capabilities. I couldn't help it. I laughed. Out loud. This man, who used to make snide remarks about how my job was boring IT stuff, was now using my name to boost his resume. Sure, I said after a pause. I can provide a reference. That night, I mentioned it to Elena. She nearly choked on her wine. He used you as a reference? Apparently, I said. Either he's clueless or he doesn't remember that I know his boss. Her expression shifted, the way it does when she's connecting dots in her head. Wait, my uncle mentioned something the other day about a team member underperforming on a major contract. Someone who talks big but delivers small. I raised an eyebrow. You think it's him? Elena smirked. I know it's him. A week later, things got even more interesting. Elena invited me to a charity gala hosted by her uncle's firm. I wasn't big on events like that, but she insisted. Just come. I think you'll enjoy the company, she said, hiding a grin. When we arrived, I immediately understood why she wanted me there. Because he was there too. My ex's new boyfriend. Dressed in a designer suit, laughing a bit too loud, trying desperately to fit in with the executives. And sitting next to him, looking uncomfortable in her sequin dress, was my ex. It felt like the universe had put us all in one room just to see what would happen. Elena and I mingled. Her uncle, Charles, spotted us and waved us over. Ah, Alex, you're the guy who saved that client integration disaster, right? I've heard good things. I shook his hand. Just doing my job, sir. As we chatted, Charles glanced across the room and sighed. Speaking of disasters, that's one of my team members. Carter. Talented on paper, but let's just say he's not quite what he presented himself to be. I didn't have to look to know who he meant. Elena leaned in, her tone light but loaded. Maybe he'll learn something from the people who actually know what they're doing. Charles chuckled. From your boyfriend, perhaps? And right then, he turned. Carter. His eyes landed on me. The recognition hit instantly. His expression faltered, then hardened. My ex noticed too. She froze. For a long moment, none of us said anything. The music, the chatter, the clinking of glasses, all faded into the background. Elena broke the silence first. Oh, you're Carter, she said sweetly. I've heard so much about you from my uncle. He blinked, trying to piece together what was happening. You're Charles's niece? She smiled. And this, she said, taking my arm, is my fiancé. That word hit like a bomb. My ex's eyes widened, her painted smile trembling at the edges. Fiancé, she repeated, as if she'd misheard. I met her gaze and nodded calmly. Yeah, we got engaged last month. You could practically feel the air shift. Carter tried to recover. Wow, small world, he said, forcing a laugh that sounded more like a cough. Elena just tilted her head. The world's only small when you keep running in circles. It was surgical, clean, polite, devastating. Charles excused himself to greet another guest, and we walked away, leaving the two of them standing in that perfectly awkward silence. Later that night, as we were leaving the gala, my ex caught up to me in the parking lot. Alex, wait, she called out. I turned. She looked different up close, tired, anxious, like the shine had finally worn off. I didn't know she was. Elena's uncle? I interrupted softly. Yeah, I figured. She hesitated. You look happy. I am, I said simply. There was a long pause. Her lip quivered slightly. I didn't mean to hurt you like that, she murmured. I just thought that I wasn't going anywhere in life. I finished. She nodded, shame flickering across her face. I took a breath, steady and calm. You weren't wrong. I wasn't. But sometimes people grow, not because they're trying to prove you wrong, but because they finally stopped needing to. She didn't respond, just stood there, eyes glossy, watching as I opened the car door for Elena. As we drove off, Elena glanced at me and smiled softly. You handled that with class. I squeezed her hand. She taught me what not to be. Final update. They say closure doesn't always come with words. Sometimes it comes with silence, success, and the quiet realization that you've already moved far beyond the people who once made you doubt yourself. 6 months after that gala night, I was standing at the altar, watching the love of my life walk toward me. Elena looked radiant, not in that cliché wedding magazine way, but in a calm, real, soul-deep way that makes you forget about everyone else in the room. The music faded as she reached me. My hands shook slightly when I took hers. This wasn't a fairy tale. It was better, because I'd lived through enough pain to appreciate the peace. When the ceremony ended and we stepped out into the golden evening light, I felt free. No bitterness, no what-ifs, just gratitude for every closed door that led me here. But life, as always, had one last epilogue waiting. A few weeks after the wedding, I was back at the office when an email popped up from HR. Subject: Reference Request, Carter M. I chuckled before even opening it. It turned out he'd been let go after the firm discovered he'd been using confidential data from clients for his freelance consulting. The irony was painful. The same arrogance that had made him seem ambitious had now burned his entire career. Out of curiosity, I did a quick search. His name was all over an online professional forum, blacklisted in the industry for ethics violations. Later that evening, I told Elena. She sighed. He made his bed, she said simply, then turned back to finish frosting the cake she'd been working on for a family dinner. But there was more. That same week, I got a text from a number I hadn't seen in months. It was her. My ex. Hey, I heard about what happened with Carter. I just wanted to say you were right. About everything. I'm really happy for you and Elena. You deserve it. For a long time, I stared at the message. There was a time when something like that would have made me feel vindicated, maybe even tempted to reply. But now, I didn't need to. Instead, I just smiled, locked my phone, and slid it into my pocket. Because the truth was, I didn't need her apology to move on. I already had. A month later, Elena and I hosted our first dinner party as a married couple. Friends, family, laughter, the kind of warmth that fills a home and doesn't fade when the plates are cleared. At one point, Elena's uncle, Charles, raised his glass and said, "To the best decision both of you ever made, not just marrying each other, but letting go of what never deserved you." Everyone laughed and cheered. Elena squeezed my hand under the table. That night, after everyone left and the house was quiet again, we sat on the balcony watching the city lights. "Do you ever think about her?" she asked softly. I shook my head. "Not anymore. I think about me, about how I became someone I actually liked being." She smiled. "Good. Because that's the man I fell in love with." We sat there for a while, no words needed. The night air was cool, the sky clear, and for the first time in years, my mind was too. Epilogue. Months later, I received a wedding invitation in the mail. Not ours, theirs. My ex's. She was marrying someone new. I didn't feel anger or sadness, just indifference. People change. People grow. And sometimes, the best revenge isn't proving them wrong. It's becoming the kind of person who no longer needs to. So I dropped the invitation into the recycling bin, poured a glass of wine, and joined Elena on the couch as she was laughing at something ridiculous on TV. And in that simple, perfect moment, I realized closure doesn't come when the past apologizes. It comes when you stop looking back.